A Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Here are the racers of the 2015 Piston Cup season, where it appears that not much has changed other than some cars have retired. Matt Carl will be retiring at the end of the season. Lane Locke's backup racer. Trevor Blolane is now in the number 6, and Jay Corner, who has failed to qualify at the New York 400 multiple times, will be retiring at the end of the season. Same with Leo Carnell and Jack Blindspot. I wonder if they'll qualify for a race in their final season. Speedson Larson has a new look, and Jason Overdrive will also be retiring at the end of the season, and Greg People has a new sponsor, Cheez-It. Ricky Speedhouse Jr. also has a new look, and Roy Energizer will be retiring at the end of the season. Same with Joey Oil Changer. David Raycar is substituting for Kyle Buschtire, who is at the moment suspended. Ronnie Carson will also be retiring at the end of the season. Same with Todd Lagasse. Wow, a lot of cars are retiring this season. Wyatt Drisker and Michael Fenderbender are all retiring at the end of the season. Jamarcus Cakart, if you saw, has a new look. Bobby Carboni is now the number 32. Will Gas Hood will be primarily racing in the 4th division. And Shane Geargas will also be retiring at the end of the season. There are quite a lot of cars retiring at the end of the season, and Landon Carsell is still racing part-time. Kurt Buschtire also has a new look, but he is suspended as of right now. And Adam Fuelspin will also be retiring at the end of the season. And Hank Weathers is also racing part-time now. Dan Revtire, Matt Virulent, and Colleen Axler will all be retiring at the end of the season. And this season has just one rookie, and that is Arthur Carstro. Buck Windshields will also be retiring at the end of the season, and Lucas Nitro Racing will primarily race in the 3rd division this season. Same with Peter Cornfield, but in the 2nd division. Will Draftrev is still around, and here are some more racers, with even more of them retiring at the end of the season. One of them being Owen Wheeler, who is only racing part-time, and Johnny Spinner will be coming back to the Piston Cup for 1 season. Pitbull Speed Racer has a new look, and Trevor Turnrev joins Ace Arrowhead Racing. Eon Evenair and Brick Hicks will also both be retiring at the end of the season. And here are some more racers. Not much has changed over here, and Ryan Rodages and Eli Goldengas. Oh, and Ryan Revster will not be racing in the Piston Cup very much this season. Billy Carjoy has a new look, in a gray car now. And Aiden Shiftwright is still a backup racer. And Mike Parker, Sam Shifter, and Edwin Burnout. Oh, and Grayson Radiator and Billy Steer will all be retiring at the end of the season. Same with Carl Throttleman. And Ace Arrowhead has the highest number out of all the racers this season once again, with the number 832. And both David Rudikar and Ryan Carex will not be racing in the Piston Cup anymore. Brick Yardley will start at pole position for the 2015 Florida 500. And to his outside, Lightning McQueen, looking for his 4th Florida 500 win. Dale Earnhardt Jr. will start on the inside of row 2, with Jimmy Cables to his outside. Row 3 has the mean yellow and red car, Joey Laguna and Carl Edwards starting to his outside. Row 4 has Tony Gasswort and Greg People with his new look on the outside of row 4. Row 5 has Clint Bolcar and Martin Carrix Jr., who are both hoping to have a good race this race. Row 6 has Kevin Carvick, the 2007 Florida 500 winner, and Cal Weathers, the defending champion. Row 7 has Casey Corner with a new look, and Bobby Swift to his outside. Row 8 has Jamie McCarry and Phil Tankson, who is hopefully going to wreck a mean car this race. Row 9 has the Garrison Racing teammates, Jamarcus Cakart and Sebastian Silva to his outside. Row 10 has Speedy Comet, who surprisingly qualified for this race, and Brick Hicks to his outside. Row 11 has James Garrison, the owner of Garrison Motorsports himself, and the Rocket Ryan Newcar. Row 12 has Billy Carjoy, another racer from Garrison Motorsports, and Rex Revler to his outside. Row 13 has yet another Garrison Motorsports racer, Chip Gearings, and Reb Meeker to his outside. Row 14 has Maury Clutchburn and David Raycar, who is subbing in for the mean yellow car. Row 15 has Kyle Carson and T.G. Castlenut, who is hoping to finish this race. Row 16 has Ricky Speedhouse Jr. and Eric Carmarola. I wonder if they'll do anything this race. Row 17 has the 2-time Florida 500 winner, Michael Cartrip. and one-time Florida 500 winner, Matt Karzith. Row 18 has Pitbull Speed Racer taking part in his second Florida 500, and Todd Marcus to his outside. Row 19 has Jack DePost and Doug Throttleman, the jumper, to his outside. Row 20 has Bad Brad Kozlowski and AJ Carmendinger to his outside. Row 21 has Cal Williams making his first Florida 500 start, and Denny Carlin to his outside. And starting in 43rd is Ernie Gearson, the oldest Piston Cup racer at the moment. And how did all of these cars, among some others, fail to qualify for this race? Brick Yardley would lead the first lap of the 2015 Florida 500, but later in the lap, he would lose the lead to Lightning McQueen, who would lead all the way until lap 14, where he'd lose the lead to Brick Yardley, who would lead all the way until lap 45. But Brad Kozlowski would be 17th as of lap 45, where he wrecks Tony Gasworth and Phil Tankson. Why? Joey Logierno would take the lead after the restart and leave for 6 laps before he'd lose the lead to Brick Yardley, who would leave for 30 more laps before Cal Weathers would take the lead for himself, leading the field all the way until lap 86, where Carl Edwards would take the lead. He would leave for 2 laps before losing the lead to his new teammate, Denny Carlin, who would leave for 3 laps before he'd lose the lead to Brick Yardley, who would lead all the way until lap 104. But on lap 104, James Garrison would fail to wreck Joey Logierno, and then Lightning McQueen would take the lead. He would leave for 4 more laps before losing the lead to AJ Carmendinger, who would take the lead on lap 108. But later that lap, Brick Yardley would retake the lead, leading for 3 more laps before he'd lose the lead to Denny Carlin, who would leave for 2 more laps before losing the lead to Joey Logierno, who would take the lead on lap 113. But later that lap, Dale Earnhardt Jr. would take the lead for himself, leading all the way until lap 145 before losing the lead to Jimmy Cables, who would leave for just 2 laps before Joey Logierno would retake the lead. He would lead all the way until lap 153, where Greg People would take the lead for himself, leading the field all the way until lap 155, where Jamarcus Capehart would take the lead. He would lead the field until lap 156, but later that lap, Joey Logierno would retake the lead. He would lead for 2 more laps before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 165. But Pitbull Speed Racer would be 26th as of lap 160, where he wrecked Brad Kozlowski, probably for wrecking Phil Tankson. Carl Edwards would take the lead on lap 165 and lead for 2 laps before Cal Weathers would take the lead once again. He would lead all the way until lap 168, where Lightning McQueen would retake the lead. He would leave for 12 more laps, but on lap 175, Speedy Comet would be out because of a hard crash. On lap 180, Joey Logierno would retake the lead and leave for 2 laps before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading for 4 more laps before Cal Weathers would retake the lead, leading for 2 more laps before he lost the lead to Martin Carx Jr. on lap 188. He would only lead for a few yards because Kevin Carvick would take the lead for himself, leading for about 5 yards before Billy Carjoy would take the lead for himself later in lap 188. But Denny Carlin would push Billy Carjoy on lap 188 and then take the lead for himself and lead all the way until lap 190, where Brick Yardley would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 191, where Joey Logierno would push Brick Yardley on lap 191 and then take the lead for himself and lead for 20 laps before Cal Weathers would take the lead once again, leading all the way until lap 218, where Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading until lap 223, where Jimmy Cables would take the lead for himself. Jimmy Cables would lead for 2 laps before losing the lead to James Garrison, who would lead for just 2 laps before losing the lead to Rex Revler, who would only lead for about 5 yards before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading for 6 more laps before David Raycar would take the lead on lap 231 and lead for 2 laps. And then Joey Logierno would fail to wreck David Raycar on lap 232. And then Andrew Axler says this, probably because he thought Joey Logierno thought it was Kyle Busch-Tire. Joey Logierno took the lead on lap 232 and would lead until lap 240. And Joey Logierno said this to Andrew Axler after he presumed that he was confused. And Cal Weathers would take the lead on lap 240. But TG Castlenut would take the lead on lap 242, leading for 10 yards before Cal Weathers would retake the lead, leading for 6 more laps before Brick Yardley would take the lead once again, leading all the way until lap 254, where Joey Logierno would push Brick Yardley on lap 254 and then take the lead for himself for 3 laps, because on lap 257, Bobby Swift would take the lead, and he would lead all the way until lap 263, where Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again, leading for 6 more laps before Clint Bokar would take the lead off of pit cycles. But after the pit stops were done, Joey Logierno would take the lead, leading the field until lap 270. But later that lap, James Garrison would push the mean yellow and red car, and then James Garrison would take the lead for himself on lap 270. But later that lap, he would lose the lead to Jamarcus Cakart, his teammate, who would lead the field until lap 271, where Cal Weathers would take the lead once again, leading for 4 more laps before Joey Logierno would take the lead once again, leading for 2 more laps before Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again, leading for 3 laps. But on lap 280, Bobby Swift would take the lead, and he would lead for 4 laps before Brick Yardley would take the lead once again on lap 284. His lead was short-lived because Joey Logierno would be second as of lap 284, where he wrecked Reb Meeker, Ryan Newcar, and Brick Yardley, who would not be out. Lightning McQueen would take the lead after the restart and lead all the way until lap 314, where Joey Logierno would take the lead once again. But 3 laps later, Carl Edwards would take the lead, leading until lap 324, where he lose the lead to Doug Throttleman, who would take the lead off of pit cycles. And he didn't jump, but later in lap 324, Dale Earnhardt Jr. would retake the lead, leading for 4 more laps before Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again, leading for 4 more laps before losing the lead to Dale Earnhardt Jr., who would lead all the way until lap 337, where Lightning McQueen would retake the lead once again, leading until lap 341, where Joey Logierno would take the lead. He would lead for 2 laps, but then Sebastian Silva would push the mean yellow and red car on lap 343, and then he would take the lead for himself, leading for 2 laps before losing the lead on lap 345 to Bobby Swift, who would lead for 4 more laps before Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again, leading for 10 more laps. But Joey Logierno would push Lightning McQueen and Brick Yardley on lap 359 before taking the lead once again, leading all the way until lap 386, where Denny Carlin would fail to wreck Joey Logierno, and then Cal Weathers would take the lead on lap 386, leading for 3 more laps before Jimmy Cables would take the lead for himself, leading until lap 392, where Joey Logierno would take the lead once again, leading until lap 409, where Bobby Swift would retake the lead. He would lead for 4 more laps before Joey Logierno would take the lead once again for 4 laps. And then Jamarcus Cakart would push Joey Logierno on lap 416 and then take the lead for himself, leading the field all the way until lap 422, where Lightning McQueen would retake the lead once again, leading for 6 more laps before Denny Carlin would take the lead once again, leading all the way until lap 429, where Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again. He would lead for about 15 yards before Joey Logierno would take the lead again. But on lap 448, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 482, where Joey Logierno would take the lead once again, leading all the way until the final lap. Denny Carlin would be 10th as of lap 497, where he wrecked Chip Gearings. Why? And then Brick Yardley would take the lead on the final lap, and Joey Logierno would be 2nd as of the final lap, where he wrecked Kyle Carson, Matt Karzith, and Ernie Gearson. Why? The mean yellow and red car also wrecked Brick Yardley and Bobby Swift, but they were not out. Piston Cup fans began to boo the mean yellow and red car, and Ernie Gearson's crew chief said this I do agree with him. Ernie Gearson barely finishes any races anymore. Why wasn't he allowed to finish this one? And then, after wrecking Brick Yardley, Joey Logierno would take the lead once again and go on to win the 2015 Florida 500, which would lead many Piston Cup fans to boo the mean yellow-red car. Kevin Harvick would finish second this race. Dale Earnhardt Jr. finished third. Denny Carlin fourth. Lightning McQueen fifth. Cal Weathers sixth. Clint Bowcar seventh. Martin Carrix Jr. eighth. Casey Corner ninth. And James Garrison rounding out the top 10. Brick Yardley would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 33rd this race. And I already mentioned the top 10, who earned the amount of points that you can see on the right side of the screen. But who was the unlucky car who finished 11th? Greg Peoples that car. Billy Cargill finished 12th. Jamarcus Cakehart 13th. Jimmy Cable's 14th. Eric Carmarola 15th. Todd Marcus 16th. David Raycar would finish 17th. Sebastian Silva, Pitbull Speed Racer, and AJ Carmendinger would round out the top 20. Cal Williams will finish 21st and earn exactly 100 points. Rex Revler, Carl Edwards, Maury Clutchburn, Britt Hicks rounding out the top 25, and surprisingly, Michael Cartrip did not lead a single lap. Jamie McCarry and Doug Throttleman finished 27th and 28th. Ricky Speedhouse Jr. and TG Castlenut would round out the top 30. Bobby Swift and Brick Yardley finished so far back because they were wrecked on the final lap. They were lucky to finish the race, as all of these cars that are currently on screen were unable to finish the 2015 Florida 500.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
Why did the mean yellow car, Joey Logierno, have to win the 2015 Florida 500? When one mean yellow car suspended, the other one wins the race. Why? Let's hope that the Busch Tire brothers, when they return, will stop being bad cars. I mean, they did get suspended for doing bad things. Hopefully, when they come back to the track, they are better cars. The next part of the 2015 Piston Cup season, the video covering races 2 to 12, will be coming out soon enough. Unfortunately, the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine is still going on. The Ukrainian people just wanted to live in peace and have freedom, but this common dream was ruined by the tyrant and bully Vladimir Putin. Why did you have to start this war? Isn't Russia the biggest country in the world? Why would you need to make Russia even bigger? Currently, Putin's tyranny rules over Crimea, the Donbass, and parts of the Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and Kherson Oblasts of Ukraine. This land all totaling to around 1/5 of Ukraine's land area. And every day it gets harder for Ukraine to win because they're running out of soldiers to fight the war. We here at the KA Bullets Piston Cup YouTube channel stand with Ukraine's struggle against Vladimir Putin's tyranny. Slava Ukrainie! Heroyam slava! Nechai Shvitsya Ukrainie permoha!
KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
I made a mistake in the Florida 500 video. This is the look of Reed Soren car for the 2015 Piston Cup season. Lightning McQueen will start at pole position for the second race of 2015, where Alex Blowman would be out on lap 28 because of an engine failure, and Joey Logierno would wreck Carl Edwards on lap 327. Why? And then the mean yellow-red car would wreck Lightning McQueen 9 laps later. And then Doug Throttleman and Rep Meeker would accidentally wreck each other on lap 358. And Billy Carjoy would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 385. Kevin Harvick would lead the most laps this race, leading for 124 laps and go on to win the second race of 2015, where Martin Truex Jr. would finish second this race, Bobby Swift would finish third, Jimmy Cable's fourth, and Ryan Newcar rounding out the top 5, with Bobby Road Testa being the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 38th this race. Cal Weathers would start at pole position for the third race of 2015, where Joey Logierno would wreck other cars on lap 236. And then Phil Tankson would fail to wreck the mean yellow and red car. Jamarcus Cakart would try the same thing, but on lap 293, once again failing to wreck the mean car. Lightning McQueen would lead the most laps this race, leading for 128 laps and go on to win the third race of 2015, where Kevin Harvick would finish second this race, Dale Earnhardt Jr. third, Cal Weathers fourth, and Joey Logierno fifth, rounding out the top 5. And Terry Cargis would be the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 38th. Joey Logierno would start first in the fourth race of 2015, where he would wreck too many other cars on lap 302. And then Phil Tankson would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 305, and then 5 laps later would try again, once again failing to wreck the mean yellow and red car. James Garrison would then try to wreck the mean yellow and red car on lap 317 and fail. Then Billy Carjoy would try to wreck the mean yellow and red car the very next lap, and then get pushed by him. Why? And now Billy Carjoy is out. Todd Marcus would be out on lap 390 because of engine failure. Kevin Harvick would once again lead the most laps this race, leading for 116 laps this race, and Lightning McQueen would win the fourth race of 2015, where Phil Tankson would finish second this race, with Kevin Harvick finishing third, Dale Earnhardt Jr. fourth, and Jamarcus Cakart rounding out the top 5, with Jack DePost finishing 33rd this race, the last car on the lead lap. Lightning McQueen would start at pole position once again, but for the fifth race of 2015, where Doug Throttleman would be out on lap 1 because of an engine failure, and Rex Revler would be out on lap 18 because of a hard crash. Joey Logierno would wreck other cars on lap 158. And then Sebastian Silva would fail to wreck the mean yellow and red car on lap 160. And then Ryan Newcar would go airborne on lap 169. And then Sebastian Silva would be out on lap 169 as well. And Arthur Carstro would be out on lap 170. All because of Joey Logierno. Why? James Garrison would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 225. And then Denny Carlin would say to Carl Edwards to wreck Lightning McQueen. And Carl Edwards says no, he won't wreck Lightning McQueen. Joey Logierno would lead the most laps this race, leading for 97 laps. And he would lead the final 6 laps of the race. But Phil Tankson would push the mean yellow and red car. And then he would go on to win the 5th race of 2015, with his teammate Chip Gearings finishing second this race, Kevin Harvick finishing third, Lightning McQueen fourth, and Casey Corner rounding out the top 5. Cal Williams would be the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 34th. Kevin Harvick would start at pole position for the 6th race of 2015, where Joey Logierno would wreck too many cars on lap 81. And then 10 laps later, Jamarcus Cakart would push Joey Logierno on lap 91. And then he would be out the next lap because he hit the inside wall really hard. And then Doug Throttleman would jump over Rex Revler on lap 93. And on lap 120, Rex Revler would be out because of engine failure. Speedy Comet would wreck Joey Logierno on lap 133. But he would be out that lap because of hitting the wall. And Joey Logierno is not out. Why? James Garrison would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 174. And then Phil Tankson would also fail to wreck Joey Logierno, but this time on lap 206. Brad Keselowski would wreck Doug Throttleman on lap 228, and then Matthew Overdrive would be out on lap 275 because of engine failure. Joey Logierno would wreck Pitbull Speed Racer and Rev Rodages on lap 307, and then Lightning McQueen would lead the most laps this race, leading for 83 laps. Joey Logierno would be in the lead for the final 8 laps of the race, and then Phil Tankson would push Joey Logierno on lap 400, which would lead Lightning McQueen to win the 6th race of 2015, with Bobby Swift finishing 2nd this race, Phil Tankson finishing 3rd, Kevin Harvick 4th, and Matt Kenseth rounding out the top 5, with Dino Draftski being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 26th. And many Piston Cup fans would boo the mean yellow and red car. And this anonymous Piston Cup fan said this. I agree with him. And also, Jamarcus Kakart would start at pole position for the 7th race of 2015, where Rex Revler would wreck Doug Throttleman and himself on lap 9, and then Joey Logierno would wreck other cars on lap 54. And then Jamarcus Kakart would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 72, and then Joey Logierno would fail to wreck Jamarcus Kakart the very next lap. Tommy Highbanks would be out on lap 202 because of engine failure. James Garrison would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 436, and then Ernie Garrison would be out on lap 461 because he got too tired. Jimmy Cables would lead the most laps this race, leading for 103 laps this race, but he would be in the lead from laps 484 to lap 499, but with 1 to go, Joey Logierno would wreck Jimmy Cables! Why? But Cal Weathers would be the winner of the 7th race of 2015, with Lightning McQueen finishing 2nd this race, Kurt Busch finishing 3rd, TG Castlenut 4th, and James Garrison rounding out the top 5, with Maury Clutchburn being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 30th this race. And Joey Logierno would start at pole position for the 8th race, and many Piston Cup fans would boo the mean yellow and red car. Many Piston Cup fans also booed when Ernie Garrison failed to qualify. Joey Logierno would fail to wreck Lightning McQueen on lap 164, and then James Garrison would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 317. Tony Gasworth would also try to wreck the mean yellow and red car, but fail on lap 332. Joey Logierno would wreck many cars on lap 340. And then, many Piston Cup fans would boo the mean yellow and red car once again. And then, Phil Tankson would fail to wreck the mean yellow and red car with 9 laps to go. And then, during the last cycle of pit stops, Brian Brooks tried to tire fight the mean yellow and red car, Joey Logierno. Maybe Brian Brooks has had a change of heart, and why, Piston Cup officials, did you suspend Brian Brooks for the rest of the season for trying to tire fight Joey Logierno? I know he didn't qualify for the race, but do you not know how many Piston Cup fans do not like the mean yellow and red car? About that mean yellow and red car, he led the most laps this race, leading for 68 laps, and then another mean car, Denny Carlin, would push Joey Logierno on the final lap, and then go on to win the 8th race of 2015, with Brad Keselowski finishing 2nd this race, Lightning McQueen finishing 3rd, Doug Throttleman 4th, and that mean yellow-red car would round out the top 5. Johnny Spinner would be the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 34th this race, and Lightning McQueen would start at pole position for the 9th race of 2015. Jay Corner missed qualifying for this race. Brad Keselowski would fail to wreck Sebastian Silva on lap 52, and then Phil Tankson would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 54. But there would be no cautions this race. Hooray! Which means, good job, Joey Logierno! You didn't wreck any cars! And Lightning McQueen would lead the most laps this race, leading for 72 laps, including pole. But Brad Keselowski would still win the 9th race of 2015, where Lightning McQueen would finish 2nd this race, Kevin Harvick would finish 3rd, Bobby Swift 4th, and Cal Weathers rounding out the top 5. Trevor Turnrev would finish 43rd this race. And Bob Cutlass would say this. I mean, a race where all 43 cars finish on the lead lap is almost unheard of. How did no one crash or have an engine failure this race? Bobby Swift would start at pole position for the 10th race of 2015, where Speedy Comet would accidentally wreck a bunch of cars and himself on lap 10, and then Joey Logano would wreck 2 other cars on lap 193, and then Phil Tankson would fail to wreck Joey Logano 3 laps later. Bobby Swift would lead the most laps this race, leading for 302 laps this race, including pole, and go on to win the 10th race of 2015, with Kevin Harvick finishing 2nd this race, with Lightning McQueen finishing 3rd, Kurt Busch tire 4th, and Phil Tankson rounding out the top 5. Dirksen D'Agostino would be the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 37th. Phil Tankson would start 1st for the 11th race of 2015, where Joey Logano would wreck more cars on lap 335, and then Billy Carjoy would wreck Joey Logano on lap 352, which would lead many Piston Cup fans to cheer. Hooray for Billy Carjoy! Billy Carjoy would be out the very next lap because he hit the inside wall. Kevin Harvick would accidentally wreck Casey Corner and himself on lap 374, and Brad Keselowski would wreck Jamarcus Kakart on lap 388. Cal Williams would wreck Brad Keselowski the very next lap, and then Ernie Gearson would be out on lap 390 because he got too tired. Kevin Harvick would lead the most laps this race, leading for 134 laps this race, but Matt Kenseth would go on to win the 11th race of 2015, where Lightning McQueen would finish 2nd this race, Brick Yardley 3rd, TG Castlenut 4th, and Bobby Swift rounding out the top 5. Reb Meeker would be the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 33rd. Cal Weathers would start at pole position for the 12th race of 2015, where Joey Logano would wreck more cars on lap 377. Why? And then many Piston Cup fans would boo the mean yellow and red car. Ace Arrowhead would try to tire fight Joey Logano from pit road, and then get suspended for the next 5 races. This would lead Piston Cup fans to boo Piston Cup officials. And then an anonymous Piston Cup fan says this. I mean, he's right. And Trick Hicks says this. Since when has it been your business over other racers getting suspended? You are the racer who's had the most suspensions out of any Piston Cup racer. Craig Shiftright would say this to the mean green car. Well, I mean, if it was allowed, everyone would have tried tire fighting the mean green car. Martin Truex Jr. would lead the most laps this race, leading for 129 laps, but Brick Yardley would be the winner of the 12th race of 2015, with Carl Edwards finishing 2nd this race, Bobby Swift finishing 3rd, Jimmy Cables 4th, and Greg People rounding out the top 5, with Rex Revler being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 37th. This is the standings after 1/3 of the 2015 Piston Cup season, with Kevin Harvick surprisingly being the points leader. 2nd and 3rd makes sense. Joey Logano's 4th. Martin Truex Jr. rounds out the top 5. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is 6th in points with Bobby Swift, Brad Keselowski, Brick Yardley, and Matt Kenseth rounding out the top 10, with Denny Carlin being 11th in points as the number 11. Carl Edwards, Phil Tankson, Jimmy Cables, and Casey Corner round out the top 15. And then James Garrison, Ryan Newcar, Clint Bokar, Jamarcus Kakart, and Jamie McCarry round out the top 20.
which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
Why, Piston Cup officials, did you suspend both Brian Brooks and Ace Arrowhead for trying to tire fight the mean yellow-red car? He is a mean car! About mean cars, the mean green car, Chick Hicks, was able to race for so long because of these inept Piston Cup officials. Let's hope that they do not screw up in the next video, which will be covering the 2015 Piston Cup races 13 to 24. The next video will be coming out soon enough. Unfortunately, the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine is still going on. The Ukrainian people just wanted to live in peace and have freedom, but this common dream was ruined by the tyrant and bully, Vladimir Putin. Why did you have to start this unjustified war? Did you forget that Russia is the biggest country in the world? Why would you need to take even more land from Ukraine? This land, right as of right now, is Crimea, the Donbass, and parts of the Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and Kherson oblasts of Ukraine. This land totaling to around 1/5 of Ukraine's total territory. Every day, it gets harder for Ukraine to win the war because Ukraine is running out of soldiers to fight against Vladimir Putin's tyranny. We here at the KA Bullets Piston Cup YouTube channel stand with Ukraine in their fight against Vladimir Putin's tyranny. Slava Ukraini! Heroyam slava! Nechai Shvitsya Darvatsya Ukraini Permoha! Glory to Ukraine! Glory to the heroes! May Ukraine be granted victory very soon!
KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
David Raykar now has this look as he is done replacing Kyle Buschtire. Now, on to the next race, where Kurt Buschtire will start at pole position for the 13th race of 2015, where Piston Cup fans are laughing because Joey Logierno needed to start at the back. About the mean yellow-red car, he would fail to wreck James Garrison on lap 8, and then he would say this: "What do you mean, Joey Logierno?" And then James Garrison says this. I mean, he's right, and James Garrison would push Joey Logierno on lap 9, but the mean yellow-red car would not be out! Phil Tankson would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 83, and then Jamarcus Cakart would try to wreck the mean yellow-red car on lap 94, but would be unsuccessful. And 4 laps later, Jamarcus Cakart would try to wreck the mean yellow-red car again. And then on lap 106, James Garrison would try to wreck Joey Logierno once again. And then Brad Keselowski would fail to wreck James Garrison on lap 121. And then Craig Shiftwright said that he's glad that his racers are doing well. And then Andrew Axler said this. I mean, he has a point. And then Kurt Buschtire would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 135. And then, Kurt Buschtire, don't say that word! And then, Phil Tankson would fail to wreck the mean yellow-red car on lap 142. By the way, he would wreck other cars on lap 155! And then Phil Tankson would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 239. And then, try to wreck him again on lap 252. And then, James Garrison would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 303. And then, Pitbull Speed Racer would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 344. Who led the most laps? Martin Carrix Jr. led the most laps this race, leading for 143 laps. And Joey Logierno would fail to wreck Martin Carrix Jr. with 1 to go. But that would not stop Martin Carrix Jr. from winning this race. With Kevin Harvick finishing second in the 13th race of 2015, Lightning McQueen finished third, Joey Logano fourth, and Kurt Busch rounding out the top 5, with Bruce Miller being the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 34th this race. Cal Weathers would start at pole position for the 14th race of 2015, where Joey Logano would wreck other cars on lap 110, and Murray Clutchburn would take the lead on lap 157, and then Kyle Busch would wreck Murray Clutchburn on lap 157, and then Joey Logano would wreck Casey Corner on lap 358. 40 laps later, Phil Tankson would wreck Joey Logano on lap 398, which would lead Piston Cup fans to cheer. And who led the most laps this race? Dale Earnhardt Jr. would lead the most laps this race, leading for 70 laps. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. would go on to win the 14th race of 2015, with Lightning McQueen finishing second this race, Cal Weathers finishing third, Bobby Swift fourth, and Martin Truex Jr. rounding out the top 5, with Carl Edwards being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 32nd. James Garrison will start at pole position for the 15th race of 2015, where Jamarcus Taycart would wreck Kyle Busch on lap 52, which would lead Piston Cup fans to cheer. But how is the other mean yellow car doing? He would wreck TG Castlenut on lap 64, and then James Garrison would fail to wreck Joey Logano on lap 70, and then Alex Bowman would be out on lap 84 because of engine failure, and then Chick Hicks said this, and then Craig Shiftwright would get into a tire fight with the mean green car on lap 85, and then a random Piston Cup fan would throw a balloon at Piston Cup official Tom on lap 87, which would lead Piston Cup official Tom to suspend the fan for 10 races, which would lead Piston Cup fans to boo Piston Cup official Tom. I mean, isn't Piston Cup official Tom supposed to be the prankster? Not getting pranked! And the Piston Cup fans would also go and tire fight Chick Hicks, the mean green car, on lap 89. And Joey Logano would fail to wreck Dale Earnhardt Jr. on lap 182. And then Jamarcus Taycart would fail to wreck Joey Logano on lap 185. And Lightning McQueen would lead the most laps this race, leading for 105 laps this race. But Kurt Busch would give Lightning McQueen the bump and run on the final lap to win the 15th race of 2015, with Lightning McQueen finishing second this race, followed by Dale Earnhardt Jr. in third, Bobby Swift in fourth, and Martin Truex Jr. rounding out the top 5. Chip Gearings would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 40th this race. Kevin Harvick will start at pole position for the 16th race of 2015, where Joey Logano would wreck other cars on lap 258, and then Samuel Serpentino and Bogart Hopscotch would wreck each other out on lap 268. And then AJ Carmeninger would be out on lap 360 because of engine failure. Kyle Busch would lead the most laps this race, leading for 122 laps, but it would be his teammate Denny Carlin winning the 16th race of 2015, with Carl Edwards, his teammate, finishing second this race, Kurt Busch finishing third, Cal Weathers finishing fourth, and the Rocket Ryan Newcar rounding out the top 5, with Sebastian Silva being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 34th. Lightning McQueen will start at pole position for the 17th race of 2015, where Joey Logano would wreck other cars on lap 6, and then Phil Tankson would wreck Joey Logano 10 laps later, which would lead Piston Cup fans to cheer for Phil Tankson. Hooray for Phil Tankson! And then Speedy Comet would fail to wreck Kyle Busch on lap 94, and then the very next lap, he would be out because he hit the wall really hard. What about the mean yellow car? He would wreck other cars on lap 131. And he would go on to lead the most laps, leading for 180 laps. And then James Garrison would fail to wreck the JGR teammates of Kyle Busch and Denny Carlin with one to go. But Kyle Busch still wins the 17th race of 2015, with his teammate Denny Carlin finishing second this race. James Garrison would finish third, Carl Edwards fourth, and Lightning McQueen rounding out the top 5, with Bobby Road Testa being the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 35th this race. Dale Earnhardt Jr. would start at pole position for the 18th race of 2015, where Speedy Comet would be out on lap 2 because of engine failure. And then Joey Logano would wreck other cars on lap 105. And then the mean yellow car, Kyle Busch Tire, would wreck more cars on lap 126. And then Andrew Axler said this to Kyle Busch Tire. And Phil Tankson would cut Kyle Busch Tire off during pit cycles, making him lose a few positions. Hooray for Phil Tankson on lap 127. And then Doug Throttleman would jump over Carl Edwards on lap 153. And then James Garrison would fail to wreck Joey Logano on lap 186. And then Doug Throttleman would jump over Kyle Busch Tire on lap 190. And then jump over Dale Earnhardt Jr. on lap 191 to take the lead. Phil Tankson would fail to wreck Kyle Busch Tire on lap 207. And then, between laps 209 and 283, Lightning McQueen and Dale Earnhardt Jr. would exchange the lead between each other. And neither would lead for more than 10 seconds at a time. And then, on lap 354, Joey Logano would wreck other cars. And then, Piston Cup fans would boo the mean yellow and red car. Phil Tankson would fail to wreck Joey Logano on lap 363. And then, with 2 laps to go, Phil Tankson would wreck Brad Keselowski. And then Craig Shiftwright would say this: Phil Tankson is not an Axler. And then Andrew Axler would say this. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. would lead the most laps this race, leading for 196 laps, including pole. And he would go on to win the 18th race of 2015. And here is the photo finish of this race, just barely beating Lightning McQueen. And after the race was finished, a bunch of cars crashed. And here is an image of that crash with Austin Drafton going into the catch fence. Austin Drafton will now be out next race as a result of this crash. Lightning McQueen would finish second this race, and he would only lose by 8 feet. Denny Carlin would finish third, Kevin Harvick fourth, and Cal Weathers rounding out the top 5, with TG Castlenut being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 28th. And Carl Edwards would start at pole position for the 19th race of 2015, where Joey Logano would wreck other cars on lap 155. And then, on lap 260, Nick Charger would be out because of an engine failure. And then, Nick Charger asked how he did. And Trevor Turnrev said this: Trevor, it's Nick Charger! He's going to be terrible! I think there are some Piston Cup fans who would have done a better job. Lightning McQueen would lead the most laps this race, leading for 94 laps, and Billy Carjoy would take the lead with 1 to go and take the white flag. But Joey Logano would wreck Billy Carjoy on the final lap, but he's not out. Kyle Busch Tire would go on to win the 19th race of 2015, and Piston Cup fans would boo the mean yellow car. And finishing second is the other mean yellow car. Kevin Harvick would finish third, Martin Truex Jr. finished fourth, and Denny Carlin would round out the top 5, with Eric Carmarola being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 38th. And then Billy Carjoy and Joey Logano would get into a tire fight at the end of the race. And then Piston Cup official Tom would attempt to suspend Billy Carjoy. But one of Billy Carjoy's pitties, Kent McOil, would cover Piston Cup official Tom in dirt. And this would lead Piston Cup fans to cheer, probably because Piston Cup official Tom got pranked while trying to suspend Billy Carjoy. And then an anonymous Piston Cup fan said this, and Craig Shiftwright was not happy about what the anonymous Piston Cup fan said. And then Craig Shiftwright tried to tire fight this anonymous Piston Cup fan, but Andrew Axler said this. Andrew Axler is right. And then a massive tire fight would break out between the supporters of Pancake Shiftwright Racing and Garrison Motorsports. racers, former racers, pit crews, and fans, all after the 19th race of the 2015 Piston Cup season had concluded. Even with their best efforts, Piston Cup security could not break up the tire fight, but the fight did end eventually, as nobody was suspended. Cal Weathers would start at pole position for the 20th race of 2015, where Joey Logano would wreck all of these cars before lap 399. Were you trying to wreck the entire field? And this would lead Piston Cup fans to demand the suspension of Joey Logano. And then Piston Cup official Tom does nothing! And then Kyle Busch Tire would lead the most laps this race, leading for 176 laps. And then Ryan Newcar, the Rocket, would go airborne with 1 to go because of Joey Logano. Why? And then Doug Throttleman would jump over the mean yellow and red car on the final lap. And Piston Cup fans are cheering because Doug Throttleman and Ernie Gearson are on the verge of having a 1-2 finish, but Kyle Busch Tire wrecks both of them on the final lap. And this would lead Piston Cup fans to boo the mean yellow car. And then Kyle Busch Tire would go on to win the 20th race of 2015, with Denny Carlin finishing second this race, Martin Carx Jr. finishing third, Rex Revler fourth, and Brad Keselowski rounding out the top 5, with Frank Vroomerson being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 13th. Bob Cutlass would say this after the race, and Daryl Cartrip would say this: "It was a crazy race." And Sebastian Silva's crew chief, Jose Silva, had this to say. And Piston Cup official Tom still does nothing! Which would lead Piston Cup fans to boo the Piston Cup official. He's supposed to keep the race safe! And Piston Cup fans would boo Piston Cup official Tom because of this reason. And Joey Logano would start at pole position for the 21st race of 2015, where Piston Cup fans would boo the mean yellow and red car. James Garrison would fail to wreck Joey Logano on lap 25. And then Phil Tankson would fail to wreck the mean yellow and red car on lap 29. And then Phil Tankson would try to wreck the mean yellow and red car again on lap 36, but was unsuccessful. 11 laps later, Jamarcus Cakart would also fail to wreck the mean yellow-red car. Tony Gassworth would be out on lap 56 because of an engine failure, and then Phil Tankson would try to wreck Joey Logano again on lap 65, but failed. James Garrison would try to wreck Joey Logano on lap 127, but failed again. Casey Corner would be out on lap 178 because of an engine failure, and then James Garrison would try to wreck Joey Logano again on lap 197, but it didn't work. Sebastian Silva would try to wreck Joey Logano on lap 208 and failed. Phil Tankson would also fail to wreck Joey Logano again on lap 216, and then James Garrison would try to wreck Joey Logano again on lap 233, failing again. Speedy Comet would also fail to wreck Joey Logano on lap 242, and then later that lap, he would be out because he hit the turn 3 wall. Andrew Axler had this to say. What is up with Speedy Comet? And then Andrew Axler said this about Craig Shiftright. And then this would lead the two rivals to get into a tire fight again on lap 245. Billy Carjoy would fail to wreck Joey Logano on lap 283. And then Billy Carjoy would try again on lap 326 and is unsuccessful. Phil Tankson would fail to wreck Joey Logano again on lap 329. And then Chip Gearings would fail to wreck Joey Logano on lap 333 from the back. Jack DePost would fail to wreck Joey Logano on lap 336 and then would try again 4 laps later and would fail again. On lap 372, James Garrison would try to wreck Joey Logano again and fail. Lightning McQueen would lead the most laps this race, leading for 206 laps, and good job, Kyle Busch Tire! You didn't wreck any cars this race! Now what about the other mean car? Joey Logano! He would push Lightning McQueen on lap 395 and then go on to win the 21st race of 2015, which would lead Piston Cup fans to boo the mean yellow and red car. His teammate Brad Keselowski would finish second this race, Rex Revler would finish third, Matt Kenseth fourth, and Lightning McQueen rounding out the top five, with Marcus Kranksler being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 40th. And Brick Yardley would start at pole position for the 22nd race of 2015, where Speedy Comet would accidentally wreck himself and some other cars on lap 130, and then Kyle Busch would wreck TG Castlenut on lap 277. Some laps later, on lap 282, Jamie McCarry would be out because of an engine failure, and then Joey Logano would wreck Phil Tankson on lap 291. James Garrison would fail to wreck Joey Logano on the next lap, and then Dale Earnhardt Jr. would lead the most laps this race, leading for 201 laps this race, and he would be in the lead for the final 8 laps of the race before Kevin Harvick would cause a crash on the final lap, which would let Joey Logano take the lead and then go on to win the 22nd race of 2015, which means that Piston Cup fans would boo the mean yellow and red car and Kevin Harvick. Dale Earnhardt Jr. would unfortunately finish second this race, Brick Yardley would finish third, Brad Keselowski fourth, and Jimmy Cables would round out the top five, with Maury Clutchburn being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 27th. Lightning McQueen would start at pole position for the 23rd race of 2015, where Joey Logano would wreck more cars on lap 129. And then James Garrison would wreck Joey Logano on lap 132. And then Piston Cup fans would cheer for James Garrison. Hooray! And Kyle Busch would wreck other cars on lap 177. And then Billy Carjoy's crew chief, Kevin Oilby, would say this. And then one of Billy Carjoy's other pitties, Campbell Revton, would say this to Billy Carjoy. And then Billy Carjoy would wreck Kyle Busch on lap 180. And then Speedy Comet would be out on lap 324 because of an engine failure. And then Lightning McQueen would lead the most laps this race, leading for 84 laps. And he would lead the final 6 laps of the race, but would still lose to Cal Weathers, who would win the 23rd race of 2015, with Lightning McQueen finishing second and only losing by 15 feet. Carl Edwards finished third, Matt Kenseth fourth, and Bobby Swift would round out the top 5, with Tommy Highbanks being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 25th this race. Kyle Busch would start at pole position for the 24th race of 2015, where Piston Cup fans would boo the mean yellow car, and then Will Draftrev would be out on lap 1 because of an engine failure, and Matt Kenseth would be out on lap 110 because of an engine failure. And then on lap 185, Joey Logano would wreck 2 cars, and then Kyle Busch would wreck Joe Ricci on lap 276. Piston Cup fans would boo the mean yellow car, and then Craig Shiftwright had this to say about Kyle Busch and then Andrew Axler said this. I mean, there was a point. I don't think Craig Shiftwright would have said anything if it was Joey Logano wrecking a car nearly 1 lap behind him. Ralph Carlo would be out on lap 380 because of an engine failure, and Doug Throttleman would wreck Reb Meeker and himself on lap 387. Joey Logano would give Kyle Busch the bump and run on lap 347. And he would lead all the way until the final lap. But Kyle Busch still led the most laps this race, leading for 172 laps, including pole, and Joey Logano wins the 24th race of 2015, with Denny Carlin finishing second this race, Kevin Harvick finishing third, Lightning McQueen fourth, and Cal Weathers rounding out the top 5, with Terry Cargis being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 35th. And here are the current point standings, with Kevin Harvick still in the lead, with Lightning McQueen and Joey Logano just behind him, with Cal Weathers not too far behind in 4th, with Dale Earnhardt Jr. rounding out the top 5 in points after 2/3 of the season, with Brad Keselowski Martin Garrix Jr., Bobby Swift, Matt Kenseth, and Denny Carlin rounding out the top 10. Not too far ahead of Brick Yardley in 11th and Phil Tankson in 12th. Kurt Busch-Tyer, despite missing 3 races, is currently 13th in points. Not far ahead of Jimmy Cables in 14th and Ryan Newcar the Rocket in 15th. Currently, Carl Edwards is in 16th, just ahead of James Garrison in 17th, followed by Jamarcus Kakart in 18th position. Clint Bolcar is currently 19th, and rounding out the top 20 is Billy Carjoy, less than 30 points ahead of 21st.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
Why does this season have to go in favor of Joey Logano and Kyle Busch-Tyer, the 2 mean yellow cars? And Piston Cup officials are doing nothing to stop them. They did more when Chick Hicks was racing. Well, Kyle Busch-Tyer, you're really far behind because don't forget, you missed the first 11 races of the season because you are a mean yellow car. And the next part of the 2015 Piston Cup season, races 25 to 35. Video will be coming out soon enough. Unfortunately, the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine is still going on. The Ukrainian people just want to live in peace and have freedom, but this common dream was ruined by the tyrant and bully, Vladimir Putin. Why did you need to start this war? Did you forget that Russia is the biggest country in the world? And currently, Vladimir Putin's tyranny rules over Crimea, the Donbass, and parts of the Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and Kherson oblasts of Ukraine. Combined, they make up roughly 1/5 of Ukraine's territory. Every day, it gets harder for Ukraine to win because of the dwindling number of soldiers that Ukraine has. We here at the KA Bullets Piston Cup YouTube channel stand with Ukraine in their struggle against Vladimir Putin's tyranny. Slava Ukraini! Heroyam slava! Nechai Shvitsya Daroretsia! Ukraini Permoha! Glory to Ukraine! Glory to the heroes! May Ukraine be granted victory very soon!
KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Lightning McQueen will start at pole position for the 25th race of 2015, where Joey Logano will wreck more cars on lap 97, and then Speedy Comet would accidentally wreck AJ Carmeninger and himself on lap 102, and Lightning McQueen would lead the most laps this race, leading for 61 laps this race, including pole, but Joey Logano would take the lead with 1 lap to go, but Jamarcus Kakart would push the mean yellow red car on the final lap, and so would Billy Carjoy, pushing the mean yellow and red car out of the way to win the 25th race of 2015, getting his very first win. Jamarcus Kakart would finish second this race, Lightning McQueen third, Kyle Busch-Tyer fourth, and Kurt Busch-Tyer rounding out the top 5, with Reb Meeker being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 35th. Kyle Busch-Tyer would start at pole position for the 26th race of 2015, where Joey Logano would wreck Casey Corner on lap 3, and then James Garrison would wreck Kevin Harvick on lap 20, getting sent into the catch fence, and Kyle Busch-Tyer would wreck other cars on lap 126, and then Jamarcus Kakart would fail to wreck Joey Logano on all of these laps. And then Jack DePost would fail to wreck Denny Carlin with 1 lap to go, and Joey Logierno would lead the most laps this race, leading for 99 laps. But Matt Karzith would take the lead with 1 lap to go, and then Brad Keselowski would fail to wreck Matt Karzith on the final lap. And Matt Karzith would go on to win the 26th race of 2015, with Brad Keselowski finishing 2nd this race, Lightning McQueen finishing 3rd, Cal Weathers 4th, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. rounding out the top 5, with Kurt Busch being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 37th. Brad Keselowski would start at pole position for the 27th race of 2015, where Joey Logierno would wreck more cars on lap 275. Why? And then Brian Sparks would go airborne on lap 300, and he was wrecked by Joey Logierno. Why? And then the mean yellow car, Kyle Busch would wreck more cars on lap 454. And Casey Energizey would be out on lap 488 because of engine failure. Brad Keselowski would lead the most laps this race, leading for 270 laps this race, including pole. But Carl Edwards would push Brad Keselowski on the final lap and go on to win the 27th race of 2015, with Brad Keselowski finishing 2nd once again. Denny Carlin would finish 3rd this race, Joey Logierno 4th, and Phil Tankson rounding out the top 5. Speedy Comet would be the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 32nd this race, and he would crash after finishing the race, and now he's out for the season. Phil Tankson would start at pole position for the 28th race of 2015, where Ace Arrowhead will replace Speedy Comet for the rest of the season, and Joey Logierno would wreck 2 cars on lap 238, which would lead Piston Cup fans to boo the mean yellow and red car. So what does he do? He wrecks Lightning McQueen on lap 364, which obviously leads to Piston Cup fans booing him. And then Lightning McQueen's best friend, Tow Mater, would give Joey Logierno the mean yellow and red car some mean faces, and then Piston Cup official Tom would attempt to suspend Tow Mater, and then Tow Mater would give Piston Cup official Tom mean faces. Rex Revler would be out on lap 375 because of engine failure, and then Joey Logierno would wreck Doug Throttleman on lap 380, and now Doug Throttleman would be out for the season. And Piston Cup fans are demanding Joey Logierno be suspended. And then Craig Shiftwright and Andrew Axler would get into a tire fight. Kevin Harvick would lead the most laps this race, leading for 355 laps this race. And he would go on to win the 28th race of 2015, with Kyle Busch finishing 2nd this race, Dale Earnhardt Jr. finishing 3rd, Cal Weathers 4th, and Jack DePost rounding out the top 5, with Ryan Thunderbolt Jr. being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 38th. Cal Weathers would start at pole position for the 29th race of 2015, where Jack DePost would fail to wreck Kyle Busch on lap 127, and then Jack DePost would himself be out the very next lap because he hit the wall too hard, and Joey Logierno would wreck 3 cars on lap 370, and then Terry Cargis would wreck Pitbull Speed Racer on lap 315, and then Jamarcus Cakehart would wreck Terry Cargis on lap 358, and then 2 laps later, Rex Revler would wreck out Jamarcus Cakehart, and then on lap 372, Billy Carjoy would wreck Rex Revler, and then Matt Karzith would go on to lead the most laps this race, leading for 199 laps, and then on lap 497, Joey Logierno would wreck Matt Karzith, but Matt Karzith would not be out. But here is an image of the wreck. Why, you mean yellow and red car? And that mean yellow and red car would go on to win the 29th race of 2015, with Denny Carlin finishing 2nd this race, Lightning McQueen finishing 3rd, Cal Weathers 4th, and Brick Yardley rounding out the top 5, with Tony Gasworth being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 35th. Joey Logierno would start at pole position for the 30th race of 2015, where Rex Revler would wreck Matt Karzith on lap 128. which would lead Matt Kenseth to go down 1 lap. And then Kyle Busch Tire would wreck other cars on lap 285, and then Rex Revler would wreck Ricky Speedhouse Jr., Chip Gearing, and himself on lap 423. Billy Carjoy would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 450. And then Phil Tankson would fail to wreck the mean yellow and red car 1 lap later. Matt Kenseth would wreck Joey Logierno on lap 453. And here is an image of the crash of Matt Kenseth wrecking Joey Logierno. And Piston Cup fans cheer. Hooray for Matt Kenseth! And then, why? Why, Piston Cup officials, did you suspend Matt Kenseth for 2 races? He's the good guy. Why are you so terrible, Piston Cup officials? And then on lap 486, Kurt Busch Tire would cause a wreck and wreck himself out. Ace Arrowhead would be out for the season 3 laps later because of a really hard crash. Despite wrecking out on lap 453, Joey Logierno would still lead the most laps this race, leading for 207 laps this race, including pole. But who wins the race? Brick Yardley will win the race, winning the 30th race of 2015. With Lightning McQueen finishing 2nd this race, Jamie McCarry finishing 3rd, Dale Earnhardt Jr. finishing 4th, and Cal Weathers rounding out the top 5, with Brad Keselowski being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 32nd. Lightning McQueen will start at pole position for the 31st race of 2015, where Joey Logierno would wreck more cars on lap 133, and then Chip Gearings would fail to wreck Kyle Busch Tire on lap 135, and then he would be out the very next lap because he hit the wall really hard. Brad Keselowski would wreck cars on lap 174, and then James Garrison would wreck Joey Logierno on lap 179, and Phil Tankson would wreck Brad Keselowski on the same lap. This would lead Piston Cup fans to cheer for both James Garrison and Phil Tankson. Ralph Carlo would be out on lap 373 because he hit the wall really hard, and Rex Revler would wreck Billy Carjoy on lap 378. Why? But Jack DePost would wreck Rex Revler on lap 381, and then Cal Weathers and Darren Ledfoot would both lead the most laps this race, leading for 112 laps each, but it would be Cal Weathers winning the 31st race of 2015, with Phil Tankson finishing 2nd this race, Lightning McQueen finishing 3rd, Brick Yardley 4th, and Darren Ledfoot rounding out the top 5. And Dirksen D'Agostino would be the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 29th. Lightning McQueen would start at pole position for the 32nd race of 2015, where Kyle Busch Tire would fail to wreck cars on lap 1, and then Jack DePost would wreck Denny Carlin and Kyle Busch Tire on lap 5, and then Joey Logierno would fail to wreck Todd Marcus on lap 18, and then Todd Marcus would push Joey Logierno on lap 20. 2 laps later, on lap 22, Jamarcus Cakehart would wreck Joey Logierno, and then on lap 38, Rex Revler would wreck Chip Gearings and himself, and then Craig Shiftright says this to Rex Revler, and then Tommy Highbanks would be out on lap 113 because of an engine failure, and then Lucas Marquez would be out on lap 128 because of another engine failure, and then Michael Bottstroyer would be out on lap 275 because of yet another engine failure, and then Samuel Serpentino and Bogart Hopscotch would wreck each other out on lap 289. Jimmy Cables would lead the most laps this race, leading for 82 laps, but it would be Bobby Swift who would win the 32nd race of 2015, with Brick Yardley finishing 2nd this race, Jimmy Cables finishing 3rd, Jamarcus Cakehart finishing 4th, and Cal Weathers rounding out the top 5, and Marcus Kranksler being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 33rd. Lightning McQueen will start at pole position yet again, but for the 33rd race of 2015, where Kyle Busch Tire would fail to wreck Joey Logierno on lap 117, and then he would wreck himself out on lap 117. And then Joey Logierno would wreck other cars on lap 214. And then Arthur Carstro would wreck Joey Logierno on lap 402. Piston Cup fans would cheer, hooray for Arthur Carstro! And Craig Shiftright would say this. Of course he would say that. And Andrew Axler would say this to Craig Shiftright. He probably has a point. And Kevin Harvick would lead the most laps this race, leading for 243 laps, and would lead every lap since lap 403. And then Dale Earnhardt Jr. would give Kevin Harvick the bump and run on the final lap to win the 33rd race of 2015. And this would lead Piston Cup fans to cheer, because Dale Earnhardt Jr. is a popular Piston Cup racer. Kevin Harvick would finish second this race. Lightning McQueen finished third this race. Brick Yardley finished fourth, and James Garrison will round out the top 5. Ernie Gearson would be the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 39th. And since Ernie Gearson finished the race, this would cause Piston Cup fans to cheer. Denny Carlin would start at pole position for the 34th race of 2015, where Tony Gaswood would be out this race because of a qualifying crash. And Murray Clutchburn would be out on lap 6 because of engine failure. And then Denny Carlin and Kyle Busch would work together to wreck all of these cars! And then Denny Carlin would lead the most laps this race, leading for 286 laps this race, including pole, including all of the last 29 laps. And then Piston Cup fans would boo Denny Carlin and Kyle Busch, but Jack DePost would get on the wall on the final lap and then push Denny Carlin from the wall. And then Jack DePost would wreck Denny Carlin and Kyle Busch, which would lead Piston Cup fans to cheer as Jack DePost goes on to win the 34th race of 2015, getting his very first Piston Cup win. Phil Tankson would finish second this race. James Garrison would finish third, Brick Yardley fourth, and Sebastian Silva rounding out the top 5. And Todd Marcus would be the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 20th. Joey Logano would start at pole position for the 35th race of 2015, where Michael McDrivewell would be out on lap 145 because of engine failure, and Reed Soren car would be out on lap 287 because of another engine failure. Joey Logano would fail to wreck Parker Brixton on lap 297, and then Phil Tankson would wreck Joey Logano on lap 300, which would cause Piston Cup fans to cheer. Bobby Swift would be the car that leads the most laps this race, leading for 308 laps, and he would go on to win the 35th race of 2015 with ease. But Lightning McQueen would finish second this race and only lose by 10 feet. Matt Kenseth would finish third, Jimmy Cables will finish fourth, and James Garrison will round out the top 5, and Brian Sparks will be the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 40th. And here are the standings with one race to go. Lightning McQueen, Cal Weathers, Kevin Harvick, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Joey Logano, the top 5, as well as Brad Keselowski, the top 6, all have a chance of winning the Piston Cup from the final race this season. Let's hope that it's not Joey Logano or Brad Keselowski, as they are mean cars. Bobby Swift is currently 7th in points. Although unable to win the Piston Cup this year, he can still finish ahead of one of the 2 Pancake Shiftright cars. Brick Yardley, Martin Truex Jr., and Phil Tankson will round out the top 10 for now. Denny Carlin is currently 11th in points, only a few points ahead of Jimmy Cables and Carl Edwards. All will hope to have a good final race. Kurt Busch is also 14th in points despite missing the first 3 races this season. And Matt Kenseth is still in the top 20 despite missing 2 races for wrecking the mean car. James Garrison is currently 16th, Ryan Newcar the Rocket 17th, Jamarcus Cakart 18th, Billy Carjoy 19th, and rounding out the top 20 with not many spots between him and 21st is Jamie McCarry. And why is Kyle Busch anywhere near the top 20?
Remember to press the notification notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
Now, there is only one race left in the 2015 Piston Cup season. Comment down below who you think will be the 2015 Piston Cup champion. Will Lightning McQueen win a 7th Piston Cup? Cal Weathers winning a 3rd and defending his cup? Or will there be a new Piston Cup champion? Let's hope it is not Joey Logano or Brad Keselowski, because they are mean cars! The 2015 LA 500 video will be coming out soon enough. But, unfortunately, the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine is still going on. The Ukrainian people just wanted to live in peace and have freedom. But this common dream was ruined by the tyrant and bully, Vladimir Putin, who started this unjustified war. Why would you need to make Russia even bigger? Did you forget that Russia is the biggest country in the world? Currently, Crimea, the Donbass, and parts of the Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and Kherson Oblasts are under Vladimir Putin's tyranny. This land totals around 1/5 of Ukraine's territory. But every day, it gets harder for Ukraine to win because of dwindling supplies, both soldiers and equipment. Which means that if Ukraine is unable to resist effectively, Vladimir Putin's tyranny will take over even more of the country. We here at the KA Bullets Piston Cup YouTube channel stand with Ukraine in their struggle against Vladimir Putin's tyranny. Slava Ukrainie! Heroyam slava! Nechai Shvitsya daroratsya! Ukrainie permoha! Glory to Ukraine! Glory to the heroes! May Ukraine be granted victory very soon.
KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Chick Hicks! On his talk show, Chick's Picks with Chick Hicks, he predicted Joey Logano, the mean yellow and red car, to win the Piston Cup. This would lead Piston Cup fans to boo the mean green car, and Joey Logano would wreck cars in practice, and then he would flip Phil Tankson. Why? But Andrew Axler is here to take part in qualifying for Phil Tankson, and then right after qualifying, Andrew Axler would crash. Let's see if Andrew Axler's time was fast enough to get Phil Tankson to qualify. Denny Carlin would start at pole position with Joey Logano to his outside. Kyle Busch-Tire would start on the inside of row 2 with the Rocket Ryan Newcar to his outside. Row 3 has Brick Yardley and Cal Weathers, the defending champion. And in row 4 is Carl Edwards and Bad Brad Keselowski. Hopefully he does not help Joey Logano wreck cars. Row 5 is Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Lightning McQueen in search of his 7th Piston Cup. Row 6 has Martin Carx Jr. and Phil Tankson. Andrew Axler did a good job in qualifying then. Row 7 has Kevin Harvick and Eric Carmarola to his outside. Now, on to row 8, which has Ricky Speedhouse Jr. and Kurt Busch-Tire, who missed the first 3 races of this season. Row 9 has Jimmy Cables and Casey Corner to his outside. I wonder if they'll do anything. Row 10 has Matt Kenseth, who missed 2 races because he wrecked Joey Logano and Brick Hicks in his final Piston Cup race. Row 11 has Greg People, who's been having a bad season, and Jamie McCarry to his outside. Row 12 has Kyle Carson and Clint Bokar, who is also having a bad season this season. Row 13 has Bobby Swift and Todd Marcus. I wonder if they'll do anything this race. Row 14 has the Garrison Racing teammates Sebastian Silva and Jamarcus Cakart. Both are having good seasons this season. Same with James Garrison, starting on the inside of row 15 and Rex Revler to his outside. Row 16 has Jack DePost and T.G. Castlenut, who once nearly won a Piston Cup. Row 17 has Maury Clutchburn, who is in his 31st consecutive season finale, and Billy Carjoy to his outside, who got his first win this season. Row 18 has Darren Ledfoot, who always does good at this track, and Cal Williams to his outside. Row 19 has Alex Bloman and Ernie Gearson to his outside. Row 20 has Tony Gasworth, who is having his worst Piston Cup season, and Pitbull Speed Racer to his outside. Row 21 has Chip Gearings and Arthur Carstro in his first season finale. And starting in 43rd is Reb Meeker, who somehow qualified ahead of these 7 cars, among many others who failed to qualify for this race. Now into the race, where Denny Carlin would lead the first lap, and then he would lose the lead to Joey Logierno, who would lead until lap 19, before he'd lose the lead to Kyle Busch-Tire, who would lead all the way until lap 31, where he would be pushed by Phil Tankson. Phil Tankson pushing Kyle Busch-Tire on lap 31 would allow Lightning McQueen to take the lead and lead until lap 36, where Brick Yardley would take the lead from him, and then lead for 8 laps until lap 44, where James Gearson would take the lead off of pit cycles. But on lap 45, Clint Bokar would be out because of a hard crash. And then Kevin Carvick would take the lead after the restart on lap 46 and lead all the way until lap 90, where Kyle Carson would take the lead from him. He would lead for 2 laps before Joey Logierno would take the lead and lead all the way until lap 138, where he would be pushed by Jamarcus Cakart on lap 138. And then Jamarcus Cakart would take the lead for himself, leading the field into the next lap. But later in lap 139, Kyle Busch-Tire would retake the lead. He would lead for just 1 lap before Carl Edwards would take the lead for himself, leading the field all the way until lap 144, where Joey Logierno would take the lead for himself once again, leading until lap 151, where Ernie Gearson would be out because of engine failure. But on his way to the garage, he would block Joey Logierno from getting to his pit stall. Hooray! Carl Edwards would take the lead after the restart and lead for 2 laps before Kyle Busch-Tire would take the lead once again, leading all the way until lap 165, where James Gearson would push the mean yellow car. And then James Gearson would take the lead for himself and lead all the way until lap 169, where he would lose the lead to Martin Carrix Jr., who would lead until lap 172. On lap 172, Brad Keselowski would take the lead, leading all the way until lap 214. In the meanwhile, Joey Logierno would be 5th as of lap 210, when he wrecks Dale Earnhardt Jr., Eric Carmarola, and Jack DePost. Why, you mean yellow and red car? Kyle Busch-Tire, the mean yellow car, would take the lead on lap 214, and 2 laps later, Brad Keselowski would be 2nd as of lap 216, where he wrecked Kyle Busch-Tire, who is now out. Brad Keselowski would take the lead after the restart and lead all the way until lap 258, where Lightning McQueen would take the lead from him, leading until lap 273, where Cal Weathers would take the lead from him. He would lead until lap 285, but 1 lap earlier, Maury Clutchburn would be out because of engine failure. On lap 285, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead and lead the field for the next 14 laps before Bobby Swift would take the lead for himself, leading for 2 laps before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading the field all the way until lap 307, where Darren Ledfoot would take the lead for himself and lead all the way until lap 361. In the meanwhile, Cal Williams, Pitbull Speed Racer, Brick Hicks, T.G. Castlenut, Sebastian Silva, Reb Meeker, Chip Gearings, Rex Revler, Tony Gasworth, and Alex Bloman would all go down 1 lap, and T.G. Castlenut would go down a 2nd lap. On lap 361, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 372. In the meanwhile, Cal Williams would get back on the lead lap. Same with Brick Hicks, both on lap 362. And then, on lap 368, Reb Meeker would get back on the lead lap. And then, on lap 372, Kevin Carvick would retake the lead, leading for 2 laps before Sebastian Silva would get back on the lead lap on lap 374. At the same time, Phil Tankson would take the lead and lead for 2 laps before Arthur Carstro would pass him and take the lead for himself on lap 375. T.G. Castlenut would also get one of his laps back on lap 375. Pitbull Speed Racer would also get back on the lead lap on lap 375. Same with Rex Revler, who would get back on the lead lap. Bobby Swift would take the lead on lap 375 and lead for 3 laps before Joey Logano would fail to wreck Jamarcus K-Kart on lap 378. Phil Tankson would be 7th as of lap 378, where he wrecks Joey Logano, the mean yellow red car. And Piston Cup fans would cheer, hooray to Phil Tankson, and then Chick Hicks would say this. Cal Weathers would take the lead on lap 379 and lead until lap 395, where Lightning McQueen would take the lead. He would lead for 11 laps before Jimmy Cables would take the lead for himself. He wouldn't lead for long though, because later in lap 406, Phil Tankson would take the lead, leading the field until lap 407, where Jamarcus K-Kart would take the lead for himself. He would lead for just 1 lap before Darren Leadfoot would retake the lead. He would lead for 3 laps until lap 410, where James Garrison would take the lead for himself, leading for just 2 laps before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 428. But bad Brad Keselowski would push Lightning McQueen on lap 428, and then he would take the lead, leading the field from lap 428 to lap 435. And then on lap 429, Lightning McQueen would spin out, and then this would lead him to go down 1 lap on lap 429. And then Chick Hicks says this. Kevin Harvick would take the lead on lap 435 and then lead until lap 460, where Cal Weathers would take the lead from him. He would lead for 2 more laps before James Garrison would take the lead once again, leading for just 1 lap off of pit cycles. And then Sebastian Silva would also take the lead during this time. After the pit stops were done, Brick Yardley would take the lead and lead for just 2 laps before Kevin Harvick would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 487, where Darren Leadfoot would take the lead once again and lead the final 13 laps. But Lightning McQueen would get back on the lead lap on the very last lap, and then he would take the lead somehow. But Darren Leadfoot would retake the lead on lap 500, and as a result of drafting, Lightning McQueen is now unable to see clearly ahead of him. But Lightning McQueen would somehow retake the lead and go on to win the 2015 LA 500, with Darren Leadfoot finishing 2nd and only losing by 12 feet. Kevin Harvick would finish 3rd, Brad Keselowski 4th, James Garrison 5th, Kyle Carson 6th, Brick Yardley 7th, Matt Kenseth 8th, Cal Weathers 9th, and Phil Tankson rounding out the top 10, and Reb Meeker being the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 31st. And I already mentioned the top 10. And here you can see it again, as well as the number of points that they got this race. This might be quite an impressive result for some of these cars. And Kurt Busch would be the one who misses out on the top 10, finishing 11th, followed by Denny Carlin, Carl Edwards, Martin Truex Jr., and Bobby Swift in the top 15. Jamie McCarty would finish 16th with Billy Carjoy, Greg People, Ryan Newcar, The Rocket, and Jamarcus K-Kart rounding out the top 20. Casey Corner would finish 21st this race, getting 100 more points, beating Jimmy Cables, Ricky Speedhouse Jr., Sebastian Silva, and Todd Marcus, who all finished in the top 25. Brick Hicks would finish 26th in his final ever race, and Cal Williams would finish 27th in his first season finale. Rex Revler would finish 28th, Arthur Carstro would finish 29th in his first season finale, Pitbull Speed Racer would finish 30th, Reb Meeker finishing 31st, the last car in the lead lap. Chip Gearings, Alex Blowman, Tony Gasswort, and T.G. Castlenut all finished on the track, but they were 1 lap down. Joey Logano, the mean yellow red car, was wrecked out on lap 378, making him finish 36th, followed by Maury Clutchburn and Kyle Busch all wrecking out. Dale Earnhardt Jr. wrecked out early alongside Eric Carmarola, Jack DePost, Ernie Gearson, and Clint Bowcar. But who won the Piston Cup, you ask? Lightning McQueen is the winner of the 2015 Piston Cup. This means that Lightning McQueen has won 7 Piston Cups in only 11 seasons. Lightning McQueen has tied the King Strip Weathers' previously unbeatable record of winning 7 Piston Cups, and also did it in way fewer seasons. And like in the 2010 Piston Cup season, Kevin Harvick will finish second to Lightning McQueen. Cal Weathers, Brad Keselowski, and Bobby Swift will round out the top 5. Due to Joey Logano's wreck, he falls all the way down to 6th in points. But Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s wreck makes him finish 7th this season. Brick Yardley had a decent season, finishing 8th this season with 2 wins. Phil Tankson and Martin Truex Jr. will round out the top 10, denying Denny Carlin a top 10 finish, finishing 11th, the same as his number. Jimmy Cables would finish 12th this season, the same as last season, same with Carl Edwards, finishing 13th. Kurt Busch-Tire would finish 14th this season, despite missing the first 3 races of the season. James Garrison would have a very good season, finishing 15th in points, and also qualifying for all 36 races. Matt Kenseth would finish just behind James Garrison in 16th. After being unfairly suspended for 2 races, Ryan Newcar the Rocket, Jamarcus Cart, Billy Carjoy, and Jamie McCarry would round out the top 20. Casey Corner, Clint Bowcar, and Greg People would all have bad seasons, finishing 21st, 22nd, and 24th respectively. Kyle Carson would finish 23rd this season, 2 places ahead of Kyle Busch-Tire in 25th. Even though he missed the first 11 races of the season through suspension, and only those wins that he got this season got him into 25th position, only a handful of points ahead of Todd Marcus in 26th. TJ Castlenut also continues his fall-off, finishing 27th this season. Jack DePost, Eric Carmarola, and Sebastian Silva will round out the top 30. Sebastian Silva actually had a good season this season, going up 10 positions compared with last season, and also beating Rex Revler, Pancake Shift-Right Racing's 3rd best racer, who finishes 31st this season. Maury Clutchburn will finish 32nd this season, the same position as he finished last season. Red Meeker will finish 33rd, and Chip Gearings will finish 34th this season. But he still qualified for all 36 races like he did last season. Right behind Chip Gearings is Cal Williams in the number 77. And right behind Cal Williams would be Pitbull Speed Racer, who both had much better seasons this season compared with last season. And Doug Throttleman, despite having a season-ending crash, which made him miss the last handful of races this season, he still finishes 37th, ahead of Tony Gasworth, who has had an absolutely terrible season this season. How are you a former Piston Cup champion and finish 38th? You also failed to qualify for a few races this season. How has Tony Gasworth gotten this bad at racing? Only finishing a few points ahead of Ernie Gearson, who seems to have an engine failure or get too tired to finish most of the races that he qualifies for. But as he's been racing since 1973, it's still an achievement that he is still qualifying for the majority of races in a Piston Cup season. And rounding out the top 40 is AJ Carmendinger.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
Lightning McQueen has won 7 Piston Cups in only 11 seasons. The King Strip Weathers needed over 30 seasons to win his 7 Piston Cups. And Lightning McQueen has also won 91 races in his Piston Cup career. And Lightning McQueen is also not even 40 years old yet, which means that he still has a lot of time left in his Piston Cup career. Next season, in 2016, Lightning McQueen will try to challenge to win an unthinkable 8th Piston Cup. The 2016 Florida 500 video will be coming out soon enough. Unfortunately, the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine is still going on. The Ukrainian people just wanted to live in peace and have freedom, but that common dream was ruined by the tyrant and bully Vladimir Putin, who saw to expand Russia's territory even more. Why would he need to do that? Isn't Russia the biggest country in the world? Currently, Crimea, the Donbass, and parts of the Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and Kherson Oblast are under the rule of Vladimir Putin's tyranny. This land totals to around 1/5 of Ukraine's territory. Every day, it gets harder for Ukraine to win against Vladimir Putin's tyranny because of dwindling resources, both in terms of soldiers and equipment. We here at the KA Bullets Piston Cup YouTube channel stand with Ukraine in their struggle against Vladimir Putin's tyranny. Slava Ukrainie! Heroyam slava! Nechai Shvitsya Daroretsia! Ukrainie Permoha! Glory to Ukraine! Glory to the heroes! May Ukraine be granted victory very soon.